Are you struggling to find something to do now that we're going through the writers and actors strikes? Two Opinionated has you covered. 625 and counting episodes of the best actors, musicians, writers, and everybody involved in the entertainment universe. Go to MeisterCon Pod on YouTube and subscribe, and you'll never miss an episode. Thank you guys for your support. Until next time, bye, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Two Opinionated. Really excited today. I've got writer Shelley Herman with me. So welcome, Shelley.
Hi there. I'm waiting to hear how opinionated you're going to be about my book.
I'm very opinionated.
Uh-oh.
You know, the good news is most of my opinions are pretty positive.
Oh, okay. So you're not just trying to lure me in right now, are you?
No. And so we have to talk about the book. It's My Peacock Tales, or My Peacock Tale, Secrets of an NBC Page, which is a mouthful, but the book is amazing. So we took our copy, and it has went through me, my wife, my son, my oldest daughter, and now it's with my parents. I think it's my dad that's reading it first, and then my mother's going to read it. So we've been passing it around.
Well,
it's been terrific. We've all enjoyed it.
I'm blushing a little bit because that's several different generations of people who are going to be reading it. And as you know, there's a few naughty parts in the book.
Yeah. It won't bother my dad. I'm waiting to see what mom thinks.
Okay. Yeah, mom gets it last. She'll be the one that burns it after it's all said and done.
Well, let's start this way, Shelley. Talk a little bit about how you got into the entertainment business and what it is you do.
Well, I got my job as a page at NBC, which is basically like an executive training program. It's the best entry level job somebody could get. And you have an opportunity to do it in New York and Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But I was lucky. I was in high school, and a bunch of us got tickets to see the Midnight Special, which was a late night rock and roll concert format show. And you were sitting on the ground, on pillows like little hippies, enjoying the music. And I saw these people wearing these ugly polyester uniforms who were getting paid to stand around and listen to rock and roll music all day. And I thought, well, hey, I can do that, because the only job I really had that I could put on my resume was being a volunteer at a local theater here in town. And I thought, well, that's enough to qualify. Little did I know that the way they do it is you have to be a college graduate. You have to, in a lot of cases, bother them for months and months at a time to get in. But I was very fortunate that while working at Sears back in the day, in the junior bazaar department, that I actually worked with somebody whose mother worked at NBC, and that was my connection to get in.
Yeah, what a terrific program to get into. I mean, we all hear about the different kind of intern programs out there, but to me, this one would be top of my list. I mean, that's amazing. You're right there where everything is happening.
Yeah, we are in the studio where it happens. And it was really a magical time when we were there, because I still say we were kind of like free range pages, because we didn't have like an instruction manual when I first got there. It was just kind of follow everybody around and hear what they're saying, so you know what to say on a tour. And in the meantime, you're running into celebrities in the hallways, and you're being asked to take these celebrities in a limousine to the airport, or to escort them around a press tour, or to take them to the Rose Parade when they're still hungover on New Year's Eve. I mean, there's so many different opportunities that we had there, and the whole idea is we were NBC's ambassadors to the talent.
Right.
So we protected them from a lot of things, and they liked us, and we liked working there for the 18 months that they allow you to do it. That's the maximum amount of time you're allowed to be a page at NBC.
Why is that?
Well, because they really do want you to make connections, or figure out showbiz sucks and leave. But they really do want you to move on and to move up into the ranks of either NBC or production jobs with the different shows that were there. I mean, this is how long ago I was there. We had Hollywood Squares,
Yep.
Sanford and Son, Chico and the Man, of course, The Tonight Show, a lot of variety shows that came in through there. And then in the back area, they're shooting Days of Our Lives. So we had every kind of show. A Tom Snyder late night show was being done there. So there was lots of opportunities to meet people and try to figure out what you wanted to be when you grew up.
Yeah. Well, so when your 18 months ended, what did you go into?
When did I what?
When your time ended as a page, what did you go into?
Well, it was kind of funny because, tick, 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 I heard, the clock on the wall. It was time to get out of there. And I had taken a job during a couple months in the summer. I broke my leg, so I wasn't able to give tours or to usher the TV shows. So I went to work in the story department as part of the internship.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this will be fun. I'm gonna go learn shorthand while I'm so sedentary. And that lasted 2 days, and I was up in the story department, and I was crying with my head on the desk. And a woman came over to me, Janet Greek, and she asked me what was wrong. And I said, I'm never going to be an executive. I can't do shorthand. I'm never going to progress out of the page staff. And she said, if you don't want to do something for a living, never learn how to do it.
Yeah.
And
I was
like,
advice.
whoa, what? And I kept thinking, well, Fred Silverman probably doesn't know shorthand, or Brandon Tartikoff, or Dick Ebersol. So yeah, maybe I do have a future, in the entertainment industry without knowing how to do all those squiggles. So as the months went on, Janet is the one who suggested that I get what my next job was out of the page staff, because she was dating one of the vice presidents at NBC.
Yeah.
And she thought if I was there to be his assistant, that I could keep an eye on things for her, so that if girls were calling or, he was catting around or anything, that I could tell her about it. So that's how I got off the page staff.
You had a little spy job.
And I did it well.
Well, so you went into writing for some of the game shows.
I was lucky that because I was still in college when I became a page. They changed that rule later on. But I took an internship with Ralph Andrews Productions.
Yep.
And they did several game shows, Celebrity Sweepstakes, Liars Club, a show called Stumpers. And so I went there and I kind of learned how game shows are produced and, the nuts and bolts of the whole thing, which, people are going, wait a minute, people write game shows? And no, Ken Jennings doesn't make up all those questions and answers himself. But it's also what the host says. You have to interview the contestants ahead of time to get their backstory. If the celebrities are going to plug something when they're on the show, I mean, it's a condensed little drama in itself, because when you are producing a show, like I did Liars Club as a one, you have 4 celebrities, and the object of that was to try to guess what a certain object was.
Right.
You want to play? Okay, wait a second. We'll play Liars Club for a second. Here's me running away. Okay, wait a second.
Where'd she go?
It's proving I'm wearing pants for the interview, so that's good right there.
That's right. That's right. You never know with Zoom.
Okay, so this was how Liars Club worked. We would tell the 4 celebrities a story about an item, and the contestants had to guess what the item was. So I'll just play it with you, and I'll give you 2 choices, okay? Okay, this item is a souvenir from Disneyland. I don't know if you've ever been to Disneyland before, but they used to have a submarine ride, which was like when you were a little kid, that was like the only ride you could go on because you were in a certain height to get into the other rides. So this is one of the windows from the submarine ride at Disneyland here in Los Angeles. Or this is what they used to put in front of TVs in the olden days so that it would magnify an image. See, look, see my face?
Oh, I see.
And this is when TVs were like really, really little in the 50s and were black and white back in the day. But the whole idea was to make it so everybody in the room could see it. And that's what it is. So it's either a magnifier or it's a window from a submarine from Disneyland in Anaheim, California. So which do you think it is?
I'm going with the submarine.
If only the announcer was here to say, but this is actually used to magnify a TV image.
I knew that was going to be the right one, but in my head, I was like, there's no way that's what that's for.
And I'll tell you, that was the fun part of the show, because we'd sit around the room and somebody'd have an object like this, and we would all guess what it was. And that's how we came up with the different stories to tell people. That. Yeah,
that's
isn't
awesome.
it fun?
Yeah, I love that. So at some point, you decided to write this book about your time as a page. You know, what was that like? When did that, you know, is that an idea that you had kind of carried with you for a while? Or did one day you just like, I should write something about that?
I had no intention of writing a book, because I thought only smart people wrote books. But there's a core group of us that have remained friends these 40 plus years. And we watch award shows together. We celebrate birthdays, you know, our weddings, our parents' deaths. I mean, we've made our own little family. But when the pandemic hit and Zoom became the thing, we started reaching out to some of our friends who no longer live in California, and started hearing more stories. And then, oh, well, I know this story about Freddie Prinze, but here's another story about him. And I knew a Donald Trump story, but then my friend had this other thing that finished that story off, and it kind of just came together in a very weird and wonderful way. I reference Harry Chapin in the book quite a few times, because he was like my idol. And he has a song, All My Life's a Circle. And I realized that with this book, that there are no coincidences. Everything kind of came full circle for the book. And in that regard, for my life and the lives of my friends. And any trepidation I had about writing the book, I felt good about it when it was all done, because, and you've like you said, you've read the last chapter. There was something very weird and wonderful that happened after I sent the book to the publisher. And I did one of those things where I just said, stop the presses, because I had to add that last little epilogue to it.
Yeah, I love that. And how fun putting together those stories and getting to kind of reconnect with people that you've known for decades.
And I didn't know half the shenanigans that were going on. And my friends that are my core group of friends, they were like, we didn't know that people were changing Tonight Show tickets for free hotel rooms. And, you know, some of the pages would go off and have a little afternoon delight giving away Tonight Show tickets to concierges. I mean, I had no idea.
That's actually pretty smart.
Yeah. Well, that's why I didn't do it.
Well, so I was always a big Johnny Carson fan. I think, you know, my mother would allow me to stay up and watch at least part of the show before I went to bed. So you were there though for that whole Johnny, Joan Rivers type of, you know, conflict that they had back then. Anything you want to mention about, you know, that particular incident that happened?
You probably watched a lot more of Johnny than I did, because when we were there in our capacity as ushers for the show, whenever Johnny would do the monologue, we had to face the audience and we couldn't watch him, because we were keeping an eye out for people who might rush the stage or have a weapon or something like, you know, something like that going on. I was there when Joan appeared as a guest on the show and as a guest host many times.
Yeah.
But I wasn't there when the horrible miscommunication, misunderstanding happened. And it to me, it's I try to explain it in the book, which even in me explaining it, it still makes no sense why it happened this way. But a memo
was just a miscommunication, right?
Well, a memo was written, possibly in jest, that listed people that could possibly replace Johnny Carson when he was ready to retire.
Right.
But he was nowhere near retiring. And on this letter was a handwritten note that said, "You have no home here." And it was given to Edgar Rosenberg, who was married to Joan Rivers.
Oh.
And Joan had been, keep this in mind, Johnny loved Joan. Johnny mentored her.
Right.
She's the only female guest host who was a comic that was on. And then by the time Joan was the permanent guest host, Johnny owned the Tonight Show. So Johnny really liked her and was really encouraging her. But at a certain point, you may recall, her material started getting kind of edgy.
Yes.
And mean-spirited. And she was constantly being told by people like Peter LaSalle and Fred DeCordova, you tone it down, Joan. This isn't New York and LA audiences only. We have the Midwest to consider.
Right.
And so when she saw this memo, she was like, that's it. I'm out of here. We got to figure out something else because they don't see a future in me and I'm not going to be here. So she cut a deal with Fox to do her own late night show. And Dorothy, who was her close friend and personal manager, was witness to this whole thing. She did try to call Johnny. He did hang up the phone on her, but you can't keep a secret in this town. He knew what she was doing. Peter LaSalle begged her not to do this. He knew it would be career suicide because the Tonight Show had like trampled every other late night show that ever tried to go up against it. Pat Sajak, Chevy Chase, the list goes on and on. Even I think Tom Snyder took a shot at it at one time. Dick Cavett. Nobody could compete with Johnny. And that's what led up to what they called the late night booking wars.
Right.
Because if you were going to do Joan's show, they wouldn't book you on the Tonight Show to be a guest. And of course, everybody wanted to be on the Tonight Show to plug their movie or their book or to stay in Johnny's good graces. And it was just a career move that went horribly, horribly wrong.
Yeah, I remember those times. And I remember those times that she was on the show and you could tell they got along really well. They liked each other.
Oh, yeah. And see, that was with Johnny. There were certain guests. Sometimes you would even wonder, why are they on? They're not plugging a book. They're not plugging a movie. But if somebody like Joan or like a Steve Martin or a George Carlin or a Tony Randall or Buddy Hackett, these guys came prepared. And Johnny would never talk to the guests before the show. He wanted to save everything for being on the air. But in some instances, he's prepped to go, so-and-so's plugging a movie. But he knew with people like Tony Randall and Buddy Hackett and even Joan, all you have to say, how are you doing? And the next 7 minutes is taken care of.
That was true. I mean, because I remember Buddy Hackett was on there quite a bit too. And all you had to do basically was wind him up and he'd go.
Oh, yeah. And see, that's what I miss about talk shows now, daytime as well as late night. They don't give the celebrities enough time to talk about themselves. Yeah. It's usually quick plug whatever it is, or they'll come on the show and the host will go, my, your skin looks beautiful. And they do a plug for a skincare product that they're promoting. There isn't just normal conversation like the Mike Douglas show or Merv Griffin, even back in the day, where you got to know these celebrities in part with their personalities as well, not just the products they were plugging. And I think that's something sorely missing from television. My
wife and I talk about that all the time. And that was part of the thought behind this podcast is we just wanted to have conversations. We'll plug stuff, anything you want. But we also want to have a really good conversation because that's the shows I grew up on. It wasn't you get to see somebody and they talk about a movie. It was you got to see these stars actually just have normal conversations and it kind of humanized them for you.
Well, and it also, in some respects, even if a celebrity was in a movie that might not have been a really good movie, you would still say, hey, there's a Charlton Heston movie. Let's go see it. I like Charlton Heston. Let's go see a Charlton Heston movie. It didn't be so dependent upon them just plugging a certain book or movie or something. It's like, I like that author. I saw him on the Tonight Show. Yeah, I'll give his book a try.
Yeah, that's it. You like the person. You became a fan of the person. So yeah, and that's the truth. When I was growing up, there were certain actors that anything they put out, I would go see it because I was a fan of theirs.
There you go. And that's one of the things that's missing. I mean, there's a lot that's missing. And that's part of why, back to me again, part of why I wrote the book, because Brandon Tartikoff wrote an autobiography before his passing called The Last Great Ride. And I really feel like we had the last best time in show business before it got too corporate, before there were too many metal detectors and budgets and things like that. We still had an opportunity to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely changed. It's much more commercialized, if that makes sense now.
Oh yeah. And you're answering to too many masters now too, because it's not just one company that owns you. That's a subsidiary of all these other companies, and everybody's got to sign off on what you do. And I can't help but think creativity somehow gets diluted in that process.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree with that. Yeah, completely agree with that. So you got, like, during that time, the 70s and 80s, there was some characters back then. So any good, like Andy Kaufman, Richard Pryor, those type of stories?
Oh, well, Andy and I became friends. He was doing a variety show that was on a very short time. It was Dick Van Dyke did a show called Van Dyke and Company.
Yeah.
And Andy would appear on there. And we got to know each other just walking in the hallways and seeing each other. And we'd have lunch at the commissary together. He liked to eat raw cashews. And I tried eating them to, like, oh, let's get along with each other. We're friends. But it was like paste. I couldn't stand it. And even down the line, he had even said to me, they want me to do this sitcom over at ABC. And my manager's making me do it. He says it's good exposure and it's good money, but I don't want to do it. I want to stay true to my art. And of course, that was Taxi.
Yeah. And he was amazing on it.
And then fast forward several decades later, I married one of the actors who was on the show the first season, Randall Carver, who played John Burns, the kind of, lovable country bumpkin guy that was on the show. So I didn't catch Taxi until reruns because my friend Andy told me it wasn't a good show. But no, he was quite a character. I'll tell you another guy that was quite a character who I adored was Chuck Barris.
Oh, yeah.
And I was fortunate that in 1972 and 1973, while still in high school, I was a contestant on the dating game. So I got to know the Barris organization because I had been there before. And actually, my 2 dates from dating game didn't work out, but I dated one of the guys on the staff for a while. And get this, I love to brag on this. We saw Tim Curry live at the Roxy in the Rocky Horror Show.
Oh,
that was one of our dates.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that was a good one. But Chuck kind of treated me like his little sister. We were both from Philly originally. He was just a rascal. He had fun, but he had like, a little timer in his brain about producing the show on the fly. He knew what needed to be done to get the Gong Show to be the best show it could be. And that included auditioning people who were really lousy. And Chuck would tell them things like, try this, try that, and give it a little production value so that he could put their bits on the air. And if you were an actor who was doing the show, like Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman, he was on quite a few times, Mayor Winningham, God, there were a lot of them. But if you were an actor and you were picked to be on the Gong Show, you actually got paid a small union fee for doing it. So a lot of people went on under different names and different wigs and costumes so they could get the paycheck. I mean, that worked with dating game too. That's why you see a lot of people that, like, before they were famous. Andy Kaufman was on there. Adam West, Phyllis Diller, some big stars did the show because at least they got a little paycheck out of it. But Chuck was wonderful, very spontaneous, very like, hey gang, I've got a bar, we've got costumes, let's put on a show.
Yeah. That's terrific. Yeah, I love you've been around just about anybody you can think of, from that time period.
It was a magical time. It truly was. And all of us realized that too. We all appreciated it.
Well, you'd have to, but it'd be difficult to appreciate it fully while you're in it.
Well, but no, there'd be certain celebrities walking through the hallways when we were giving a tour, and they would give like a cursory hello or something. But when you're giving a tour and it's a lunch break and they open up the doors and John Wayne comes out and Bob Hope, and they spend time talking to the crowd. I mean, even Johnny Carson, when we would just, coincidentally happen to be right where he was exiting his car to go into the studio. And he would always do a little shout out to tourist, like the tour is a ripoff, get your money back, they're all lies, nothing but lies, and it would make somebody's day that they got to hear Johnny Carson and see him in his civilian clothes walking into the studio.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'd be that way too. If I was taking a tour and ran into somebody, I'd be talking about that forever.
Yeah, it was like I said, it was pretty magical, pretty exciting. And then there were some times when you'd be giving a tour like on a Saturday afternoon and nothing was happening, and you'd have to resort to saying, here's the celebrity vending machine, this is where they buy their apples, or see that mountain out there, that's Walton's Mountain. Sometimes we just had to say anything to kind of beef up the tour a little bit, because sometimes there was like nothing going on.
Was there ever anybody that you ran into that they made you nervous?
Fred Astaire.
Yeah, that would probably do it for me too.
Or Alfred Hitchcock. That would be another one.
Good one.
Yeah. I had done my senior thesis on Alfred Hitchcock, and I was at the 1977 Emmy Awards, and I had done all the things I was supposed to do as a page, and all of a sudden this limo pulls up and out came Alfred Hitchcock, and my friend Jeff was holding one arm and I was holding the other side, and he was like, his whole body weight was on me, it felt like, and we had to walk him backstage, and there was like lots of cables and it was dark, and I was just really afraid I was gonna have to catch him if he fell. I mean, he was a big dude in the day.
He was big.
And I'm trying to figure, like, I want to say something to him, but I want to be professional. And he turned to me at a certain point and he said, "You're doing a very good job." And I looked at him.
That's a good impersonation.
Yeah. And I said, "Thank you, Mr. Hitchcock. I did my senior thesis on you. Ask me anything about you." And he kind of smiled at me, a little mischievous smile. And Jeff and I got him to his mark backstage, and we ran real fast, and the curtains opened, and everybody got to see Alfred Hitchcock.
I love that story. Yeah, that's terrific. What about, did you get to meet like any of the Rat Pack?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I was around them, meeting them. I mean, casual conversation, but there's that wonderful story in the book about there was a little old lady named Sadie. Sounds like a limerick I'm about to tell. A dirty limerick. But whenever we were taping either Hollywood Squares or Sanford and Son, Sadie would show up, and she would take several buses to get to the studio, but it's free to see a TV show being taped. So it was how she spent her leisure time.
Yeah.
So one day Sadie comes to the Sanford and Son, and she says, "What's all the commotion next door?" And I said, "Well, Frank Sinatra's doing the Tonight Show." And she said, "He bailed me out of jail once." Oh, really, Sadie? And although her last name was O'Sullivan, she was a Jewish lady and was very upset when there was going to be a luncheon of the American Nazi Party at a hotel near her apartment.
Yeah. So
she went over there and she hit a Nazi with her purse and got arrested. And while she was still being processed, they said to her, "Okay, Sadie, you're bailed out of jail." And she says, "Who knows I'm here?" And she got a telegram that said, "Way to go, Sadie. Love, Francis Albert."
Oh my gosh.
And somehow Frank had heard about it. So I couldn't let that go unnoticed. So I went to Red Fox's dressing room. Keep in mind, he was one of the more prickly celebrities that NBC was dealing with. And I knocked on the door. I know he didn't expect to see me. And I said, "Do you know Frank Sinatra?" And he went, "Yeah." I said, "Do you get along with Frank Sinatra?" "Yeah." I told him the Sadie story. He held up taping of Sanford and Son and took Sadie over to meet Frank Sinatra so she could thank him.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that story. Yeah. That's good for you for thinking to do that. I mean, that's amazing. So she actually got because he had never met her either.
No. And I mean, just such a bizarre circumstance. And I know that like time is money when you're shooting a TV show, the fact that Red would do that. Well, Red would do a lot of things to hold up production. Maybe it wasn't that noble of him to do that, but in this case it was, because it really made her feel good,
Yeah, of course it did. Of course it did. What's your favorite story in the book?
No one has asked me that before. Wow. I'm almost thinking the epilogue is my favorite story in the book, which is
Really good.
a story about what happened 47 years after my history with NBC began. I don't know. Maybe it's like trying to pick your favorite child, because different days I feel like different stories. Like I have a Me Too story in there that starts off very fun and lighthearted and gets a little dark, but hopefully at the end it's a little more spirited and a little. But that's one of those stories that I think, like, if young people, men and women, read that they would get a little more empowered if they ever got themselves in a situation
Right.
that they had a hard time extricating themselves from. Um, no, I'm gonna say the epilogue, the cherry on top of the sundae that
I
is.
thought you might say that because that was one of my favorite parts of the book.
It's a little woo-woo, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good one to end on. Like you made the right decision going back and including that.
Thank you. Thank you. It meant a lot to me. And like I said, I'm a big Harry Chapin fan. I did get to meet him backstage at the Tonight Show. And all these years later, he still leaves a wonderful impression on my heart. His motto was always, when in doubt, do something. And I really feel like that's how I've lived my life. You know, I've tried to do things, hopefully for the betterment of my friends and maybe my enemies at times. But that's how I think we should all live, is to just, kind of put it out there and try to help other people.
Well, yeah, absolutely. 100%. We should do that. Well, Shelley, thank you for coming on for a little while, but the book is amazing. I would encourage everybody to pick it up, especially if you're like me and you grew up, through the 70s and 80s. So, everybody that you're talking about in the book was such a big person or personality at that time. And we didn't, it was one of those times where there was no internet. We didn't have all this social media stuff. So the talk shows were really how you got to know, these people you were seeing on screen.
Yeah.
With that. So it was just such a fun time, I think, in our entertainment history. I love that you've written the book. Have you been asked to do a sequel? Because I know you probably couldn't fit all the stories in there.
You know what? Leave it to my friends. Like, the minute the book is like signed, sealed, delivered, they go, "Ooh, one more thing." Yeah, there's a whole lot more stories. I even have somebody who told me that that they made Whoopi on Johnny Carson's couch at the Tonight Show.
There's your bucket list item.
Yeah, that was something. But what I'm hoping for, rather than having to pound out another book, is if maybe somebody might be interested in doing it like as a streaming TV series.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Kind of like Sex and the City meets Mad Men, kind of little nostalgic vibe to it.
Yes, I love that. That'd be terrific. All right. Well, when you get that done, you have to come back.
Well, when you're a producer and you buy my book, you can talk to me about it.
Okay, deal.
Okay.
That's a deal. Technically, I do have some production credits, if you can believe it. They were just kind of happened, but technically they're there.
Okay. Well, I'll have my people call your people.
We have pretty easy to locate. Now, Shelley, this has been terrific. So before we wrap up, where can we get the book and where can we find you on social media?
My website, coincidentally enough, is my Peacock Tale, Tale, my peacocktale.com.
Yep.
The book, same name, my Peacock Tale. And that's a picture of Johnny Carson and me when I did Stump the Band. And that's where that picture. And what's so funny, you can't really see it from here, but on the cover, it's Johnny Carson's autograph saying to Shelley, "Good luck, Johnny Carson." And I actually got somebody on social media that said, "Doesn't she know she's not supposed to sign the cover of the book? That's really wrong. And it's Johnny's signature. It's not mine."
That's right. You do whatever you want.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. You can I would say if you have a local independent bookstore, I would love for you to buy it through them. It's a Kindle hardcover and soft cover, and maybe sometime soon to come an audiobook, but nothing exactly yet.
That'll be a fun one to see who you get to read it.
Me.
Oh, well, that's even better. I'd love to hear it in your voice. That would be awesome.
Well, and somebody had asked, I did a book signing at Barnes and Noble, and they said, who do you want to see play you when it becomes a TV series? And I said, me, with great lighting.
I love it. Yeah, you should totally be able to do that.
I think so. Do I look as dewy as a 20-year-old now?
Only if I do.
He looks fabulous then, darling.
Now, Shelley, this has been terrific. I'm such a fan of this book. I absolutely love it. And I didn't mention my son Brett, does the podcast with me. He got it into the local libraries. So it's
thank you, Brett. Thank you.
It's
I appreciate that.
Yeah, because he loved it so much. And I mean, he wasn't around when most of this was going on and stuff, but he's such a kind of entertainment history type of buff. He loved it. Had just the best.
Well, I love it that people his age are going to know who people like Gilda Radner were and Johnny Carson, because they were so pivotal in the evolution of television that that I'm glad he liked it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, and it inspired him to go back and watch some of those Carson shows, because Peacock is showing those now.
You know what I would encourage him to do too is go to YouTube and look for Freddie Prinz's first appearance on the Tonight Show.
Okay.
Because we talk about that in the book, and his material holds up now. I mean, this was a guy that did this 47 years ago.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
I'll tell him that, because he's a big fan of his son. So I'm sure he'd love to read about the dad or watch.
Yeah. To see, that's somebody that should be, people need to talk about Freddie Prinze more. He had a very tragic life.
He did.
It wasn't showbiz that was his undoing. He had some problems before he became famous, but he's certainly somebody that seems to be forgotten.
Yeah, he was so talented.
Especially commemorating, Hispanic comics. It didn't all just start with Paul Rodriguez and George Lopez. There was Freddie also. Yeah,
like I said, he was amazing. Yeah, he was very popular with my grandparents. They were big fans of his. So anytime something was on that he was in, it'd be on the TV.
Well, I'm sure Brett's going to get a kick out of this, and especially knowing that in the book I detail how Freddie almost didn't get on the Tonight Show, and how people fought for him to get on the show, because he was, he wasn't a guy that was wearing a shirt and tie. He was kind of scruffy looking. He had long hair, had a mustache.
Yep.
So he got on the air even though he didn't look like Tonight Show material.
Yeah, and thank goodness he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're right, that he was amazing. I remember that. I just haven't seen it in years.
Yeah, that's your homework tonight. Look
okay,
that clip up.
That's an easy one. I'll enjoy that one. All right, Shelley, hold on 1 second. Writer Shelley Herman, take my word for it. The My Peacock Tale, Secrets of an NBC Page. It is loaded with the best stories. Check this book out. It's out there now. Can't recommend it enough. Just amazing. And Shelley, we didn't talk too much about it, but she worked on a ton of game shows, Supermarket Sweep. She worked on Love Connection, all kinds of them. She's a really talented writer, and you definitely see that in the book. So please check that out. Thank you guys for tuning in again this week. Really appreciate that. If you're finding us for the first time, love to have your support. Our YouTube channel is MeisterCon Pod. If you could just hit subscribe, it's free. If you're a listener, just wherever you're listening at, just subscribe there. That'll help us as well. You can find all 650 episodes, audio and video, on our website, meistercon.com. So please check us out there as well. Thank you very, very much. Till next time. Bye, everybody. Hi, everybody. I'm once again here to ask for your support It's been a big year for the Two Opinionated podcast. Back in February, we got to live out a dream, moderate for William Shatner here in our hometown. In May, we passed 100,000 downloads on our YouTube channel, and we followed that up in June with 50,000 downloads on the audio side. We recently posted our 600th episode, which is pretty good volume for just a father and son operation. You know, not too many podcasts can keep that volume up. We've been doing this now for 4.5 years, 600 plus episodes. We recently hit 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel, which is a really big deal for us because we've always gotten the views, but have struggled to get people to subscribe. So that 1,000 was a big deal for us. And best of all, we were recently named one of the top podcasts on IMDb, which is the entertainment database. You know, those that are ahead of us, we came in at number 82. Those that are ahead of us are bigger companies like Disney, mostly Marvel, and Joe Rogan, that type of podcast. So for us, being just a small West Virginia father and son podcast, to be in the top 100 out of 15 million, it's a pretty big deal for us. So thank you for everything you've done for us so far. Got a couple little ways, though, that you can help us, and they're free, and they're really easy. If you haven't checked out our YouTube channel yet, please go to YouTube. It's under MeisterCon Pod. Just hit subscribe. It's free. Doesn't cost you anything. Really helps us a ton. And maybe even more important, if you could go to imdb.com, look up the Two Opinionated podcast, and just look around the page. Just having that traffic on the page really helps us out. So that's a couple easy ways that you can support us, even if you're not listening or watching all of the time. And we want you to listen and watch, because I think that our guest list, I would put up against anybody, any other show, podcast, anybody out there. I think our guest list holds up. So please check us out. You probably will find somebody that you like, or maybe somebody that you didn't know you liked, but kind of discovered them on there. There's tons of that. If you're into music, we have that too. If you like books, we've got authors on there. If you're more into what goes on behind the scenes in the entertainment world, you know, we've got producers, directors, video artists, anything you can think of that happens behind the scenes, we've had them on the show. So definitely check us out. Thank you guys so much. Until next time. Bye, everybody.